Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And I got to say, it's very exciting that we've got training camp starting right now. But let me tell you what, this is a season unlike any other that we have ever been through, okay? And we've got to make contingency plans and we got to strategize for what COVID could potentially do to fantasy football this season. And that's what I want to talk about. So stay tuned. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast, coming at you from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I just wanted to thank you very much for watching my video today. Please like and subscribe down below. And if you want to, please leave a comment as well. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your questions. Today, we're going to talk about the potential impact of COVID on this year's NFL season and some changes that we need to make both league-wise and team-wise for strategy this year because we don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, look, basketball and baseball are both back in season right now, and baseball is already a mess with teams having to cancel games or postpone them. You can't really postpone games in the NFL. It's just not going to work. There's not enough time. So if a game gets canceled, that's probably it. They're not going to, they're not going to be able to reschedule that thing for a couple of weeks later because there's going to be another game going on at that point. So anyway, we just need to talk about this. I got three things to talk to you about when it comes to what you need to be talking to your to the league manager about, and also what you need to be doing and you need to be looking at for this fantasy season. All right, so one of the big things I want to talk about today is the risks of early drafting, and I came into contact with again this week with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signing LeSean McCoy and thereby hurting the value of both Keyshawn Vaughn and Ronald Jones, who I just drafted on one of my teams. And I got to tell you, man, we're not done. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now. We still have Devonta Freeman out there as a free agent. I am betting he is going to get signed. His price is going to come down enough, and someone's going to take it. Now, who's it going to be? Candidates would be teams that lack a clearly defined RB1. I'm thinking the Rams. I'm thinking the Eagles. I'm even thinking that they might bring him in at New England. There's a number of teams that still do need some running back help, and he's out there. And the way of the NFL this year, just as a general trend, has been going towards an RBBC, and not just a two-person RBBC, but a three-person RBBC, which is the worst thing in the world for fantasy. It's just going to make our lives that much more difficult, and it's part of the risk of drafting early. And that's why I always like to set my drafts as close to the start of the season as possible to prevent those last-second surprises from happening. And also, there's the trap that when a team doesn't sign somebody, and this happened last year with like Kansas City, when they cut Carlos Hyde, and then all of a sudden Darwin Thompson vaulted up to like a top 6 pick. It was like crazy how quickly he was bid up the draft board. And then, they signed LeSean McCoy, and, Darwin Thompson just fell back into oblivion again. But in the meantime, all those people that had drafts during that 2 or 3 day period that spent those early draft picks on Darwin Thompson, they were screwed out of a pick, essentially, is what it comes down to. So you just have to be careful. It's gonna happen, and I was very, very big every day. I was more for Ronald Jones than I was the day before. I was just getting more excited about him. The news was great that was coming out about him and stuff. And now LeSean McCoy comes in. And even though LeSean McCoy is a post-peak running back, probably will not even see 100 carries this year, it still is going to damage the usage of both Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn, and thereby push them farther down the draft board. Now, As far as how much, not quite sure as of yet. But like I said, I think 100 targets. I think LaShawn McCoy taking 100 targets out of why do I keep saying targets? 100 carries out of this backfield, maybe about 30 targets or so is probably what we can expect. So LaShawn McCoy is not a fantasy asset. You don't need to worry about drafting him. But, Ronald Jones, right now he's like a 6th, 7th round player. But if he falls to the 8th or 9th round, he still might be a good choice. So we'll see what happens with that. He still looks good on my app for value. Because I got him ranked at about 70th overall for value. But, again, it's just part of the risk of playing fantasy football and drafting early. I finished my first draft of the season, and this is for the Instagram Breakout League that I'm a part of. And I got to tell you, I'm very happy with this team. This is a PPR league. And so I went very heavy on PPR running backs. And I think I've got a very, very solid team. This is the one where I had the first pick, and then I traded away my number 1 pick and moved back to the 9th position, and then got a bunch of bonus picks. So my whole draft was done at round 12, which is amazing. That was great. And although looking back at it, there's a couple things I should have done differently, I'm still very happy with this team. So here's what I got. I did the optimal allocation strategy. So this is a league. It's a normal setup, but 2 flex spots, just tight end, wide receiver, running back flex spots. And so according to optimal allocation, I got myself 5 wide receivers. So because we have 2 wide receiver slots, 2 flex slots, plus 1, that's 5. I only got 1 tight end, 1 quarterback, and 1 defense. There's no kicker in this league. And so here's what I ended up with. So my quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, right? Very happy with that. That's like my favorite pick. Normally I would have taken Patrick Mahomes in this kind of a league because I always wait till as late as I can to take my quarterback. But in this case, I had the extra pick at the 2nd, 3rd turn, and so I used that extra pick to take Mahomes. So that was great. My tight end is Zach Ertz, who is the highest volume tight end in the league. Again, PPR league. He's very valuable because he gets so many targets. He was my bonus pick on the 4 or 5 turn. So I had a bonus pick there as well, so I took him. My defense is Buffalo, which has a great early season schedule. So they should be good for at least the first 4 weeks. I'm going to have to determine if I want to keep them after that point. But the first 4 weeks of matchups is great. Let's see here. So my running backs, I got Drake, Le'Veon Bell, and Kareem Hunt as my top 3. All these guys are projected to get at least 74 targets, which means that when looking at last year's stats, they would be top 6 in the league for running back targets, all 3 of them. Then my other running backs are Ronald Jones, who obviously took a hit this week, Boston Scott, Phillip Lindsay, and Darrell Henderson. All these guys are projected to get at least 44 targets during the upcoming season, which places them basically in the flex level volume for targets. So, I'm very happy that every single one of my running backs is a prolific pass catcher. They should all be quite valuable during this season. My wide receivers, again, very happy with it. I got Robert Woods. I got Cortland Sutton, Jarvis Landry. Those are my top 3. And all those guys are projected to get at least 125 targets, which puts them all solidly in high-end RB2 volume with RB1 upside. I think any one of these guys could end up as an RB1 this season. And then I've got Preston Williams as my high upside roll the dice player. And I got Curtis Samuel. And so again, these guys all get very good volume. I got 2 guys that do double duty. Both Woods and Samuel also do rushing during the course of the season. So they're both projected to have about 15 carries each, plus an additional touchdown on the ground. So like I said, very happy with this team. Very solid team overall. And I think I'm going to be well-suited going into the regular season there. So I want you to notice also that there's no free agents on my team. Nobody that switched teams is on my team. I didn't take any rookies. All the rookies went earlier than what I wanted to take them, so I didn't take any rookies. And I did go big on second-year players. Boston Scott, Darrell Henderson, Preston Williams. Those guys are all second-year players. So again, instead of looking at rookies for upside this year, I'm looking at the second-year players. Those are the ones I'm most interested in. DK Metcalf's one that I really like. I'm liking more and more as time goes on, but that's really who you should be focusing on instead of rookies. If you've got a favorite rookie, go ahead and draft him. But otherwise, I would only take one, and just to limit the risk associated with this. We talked about what John Elway said. And what I've said about the rookie reality check this year. But let's go into, the big issue here, and this is what I want to go into in regards to COVID for this year and just the impact on the practice season and no preseason games and all this. And that is, when it comes to fantasy football, you want continuity this year. Continuity is your friend. You want coaches already established on that team. You want players that have already been in the system with those coaches on that team. So when you look at rookies coming in fresh into this totally new situation, they're at the biggest disadvantage of any player that's joining the league. Not far behind them are the free agents. Now, I usually downgrade free agents anyway, just because of the risks associated with that adjustment period, with them getting up to speed on the new offensive system and gaining the trust of their players and all that. But again, it's all amplified this year. So you've got to be really careful with these guys, and I would just tend to avoid them. If you can out there. Also, looking at teams that have the same head coach and same offensive coordinator is a very important thing to look at. And so, there are actually quite a few teams that retained both the head coach and the offensive coordinator. Again, that's an advantage to the people that take players off these teams. I'm going to give you the teams right now. We've got Arizona, Atlanta, Baltimore, Buffalo, Detroit, Green Bay, Houston, Indianapolis, but Indianapolis has a new quarterback, so that's a downgrade there. Kansas City. You got the Chargers then, who's either going to have Tyrod Taylor or a rookie as their quarterback, so that's a downgrade there. Las Vegas, Miami, of course, they're breaking in a new quarterback. And let's see here, who else? Minnesota, New England, New Orleans, the Jets, the Eagles, the Steelers, Seattle, San Francisco, Tampa Bay, which of course it now has Tom Brady on there, and then Tennessee. So those are the teams that have the most continuity in the coaching position. And those are the teams you should focus on this year. When you're looking at players, if it's a choice between a player on one of these teams and a player on another team that has a new OC or a new head coach, boy, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be looking at these teams that have not had any changes in their coaching staff, for the offensive coordinator and head coach. The other thing I think you should do, and if you are a fantasy manager, and you should do this. If you're not the fantasy manager for your league, you should talk to the manager and the commissioner, and just say, hey, look, I think we need to expand the bench slots to 10, right? What's going to happen if there's a COVID outbreak in Carolina, right? What's going to happen, and you're sitting there, you've got one or two players on that team, on your fantasy team. You need extra bench slots this year to account for this, because not only would Carolina get canceled, but also the team that they're playing against would get canceled too. And we're talking, look at the problems baseball has had. The size of the teams in baseball is much smaller than the size of the teams for football. So there's more people, there's more chances for a COVID situation to spread quickly, and then that team can't play for 2 weeks, right? What's going to happen then? So to help protect against that in this year's fantasy football, take those bench slots, expand them to 10. Give people 10 spots that they will have the enough space to move these star players off their roster, and then have enough people in reserve to replace that. And it's just going to help the league run quickly. I mean, I just can't, if you've got like 3 players which suddenly are not available because of COVID, that's half your bench right now for most leagues, and chances are you don't have the space without having to just gut things off your league. So expanding to 10 just gives you more flexibility and more ability to weather these storms. All right, so the final thing is that you need to have a plan if the season is suspended or canceled for your fantasy league, okay? So, what's going to happen if that happens? What if they get 8 weeks in and there's like 7 teams are out because of COVID, and they just decided, we can't continue the league as is. So what's going to happen in your fantasy league if that happens? Well, you need to have a plan for that, and you need to let all the players in your league know what the plan is. I mean, are you just going to pay out the dues to whoever is first and second place at the time of the suspension or the cancellation of the season? Are you going to just roll that into the next year? Are you going to roll those dues into the next season? There's all sorts of things to consider here. There's so many things that can go wrong. It's just so tenuous right now. You got to be prepared. You got to have plan B in effect. And so you just need to, we're getting to the point right now where people are going to start signing up for their fantasy leagues. So you need to have this already laid out for them. Say, look, if this happens, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to pay it out to the number one. The number one team will get, 75% of the pot. The number 2 team will get 25% of the pot. And just at the time the season is suspended or canceled, that's what we're going to do. So, and that's how you're going to have to roll with it this year, man. It's just the way it is. It's just reality. And you want to hope for the best. You want to hope that it's going to go, the season's going to go off smoothly without a hitch. And I'm telling you, it's not. So there's going to be stuff happening, and we're going to have to deal with it. So we're going to have to deal with it for fantasy too. So again, in summary, you want continuity in your players and your coaches for your fantasy team. You want to expand the bench slots on fantasy teams this year to allow for extra space just in case teams have to forfeit if there's a COVID outbreak or whatever, or games get canceled. And then you need to have a plan for what happens if the season is suspended or canceled for fantasy. That how are you going to pay out? Are you going to roll it over to the next season? What's going to happen with all that? So that is my podcast for today. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope this thing has helped. But we are going to go and we're just going full on into this, man. We're gonna be talking more about players and talking about their prospects. And like I said, if you got any questions about players or teams or whatever, please drop me a message below, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. And thank you very much for watching, everybody. Have yourself a great weekend, and we will talk again on Wednesday.